Have you ever felt that itch to toss out the mundane and chase those whimsical dreams? Well, if the corporate grind has ever made you feel like you're in a never ending loop, today's guest will show you how to make that exciting twist. You might remember Karin Freeland from episode 194. Well, she's back to chat about her new book. Karin hasn't just taken the leap to pursue her dreams, but she is making it her mission to teach others to do the same with her new book, Grab Life by the Dreams. Welcome back, Karin.
Hello, that was an amazing introduction. I was like, who is she talking about? Thank you.
I'm talking about you, girl.
Yeah, that felt really good. Thank you.
So the last time we spoke, it was about your other book, which
Yes.
was a very different topic than what we're tackling today.
Yes, the ins and outs of my vagina, a penetrating memoir. I mean, yeah, it doesn't get any more sensational than that.
So this is a bit of a pivot. Can you
Yes.
maybe take us back to where life was, what led you to read this book, and sort of really the true essence behind your why you pursued writing this book?
Yeah, absolutely. So I call myself a recovered corporate workaholic because I spent 15 years in corporate America chasing paychecks and titles, the things that I thought really defined success in this world, only to wake up one day and realize that I was completely miserable. I wasn't happy. Everything on paper looked great. I had the marriage, I had the 2 kids, they're healthy. I mean, roof over my head, Ben's in the driveway. Like, what else are you supposed to want? And yet I felt so incredibly empty. And so in this process of trying to figure out, well, like, if this doesn't make me happy, what does make me happy? I decided to write my first book. And as I was writing that book, everything started shifting for me. And I realized I wanted to start a business, and like things just started falling into place. And I realized I had more power than I thought I had. Right. I didn't have to just sit in the passenger seat of life anymore. I could steer this car in a different direction. And that to me became incredibly exciting. So that's how I got into life coaching. And as I started coaching these women, I realized I have a whole process. Why am I just limiting it to the women that I coach? What if I turned this into a book and I was able to actually share my whole edit methodology and change a heck of a lot more lives? And so, starting in September of last year, September 2022, I began writing Grab Life by the Dreams. And now here we are, just a little bit over a year later, and it is out on the market. It's crazy and amazing.
It's amazing how quickly life can unfold
Yes.
once you make that decision to just go for it.
Yes. And it was so interesting because I talk a little bit about it in chapter 2, seeing the signs from the universe. And, I'm not super woo. I would call myself like a woo moderate, like I'm somewhere in the middle. And, but I started seeing things that they were beyond coincidental at this point, and as I started to take steps in a new direction, things just started lining up in a way that confirmed, yes, Karin, this is the direction you should be going. And so I hope that with the book, I'll also get women to start paying attention to the signs in their life so that things can unfold much more quickly than they originally did for me. Because from the beginning of my midlife crisis to actually, turning things around, I would say it was a good solid 4 years. So,
Well,
with this, hopefully you could do it a
I
lot
would
faster.
say you're a much faster learner than me. It's taken me 6 years. So
Yes. And so if anybody's
congratulations.
out there and you're like, oh, well, I'm 10 years, it's okay. We all are
It's
on
all
our own
good. We
journey.
all get there in the end, and that's what's important. I want
Amen.
to go back to
Sure.
something that you had mentioned, and that's that empty feeling.
Mm,
And I'm finding, and I'm curious to see, your perceptions of this in coaching women.
yeah.
But I'm almost feeling it's like this underlying epidemic
Hmm.
where women of our generation who did all of those things that you said, we had that list,
Yeah.
and I'm still looking for the author of that list because that person needs to be throat punched.
Yes.
we all follow this process. And now we're hitting our midlife years. We're going, oh, wait a second here. And that emptiness, I remember that emptiness because on one hand, you're acknowledging that something is missing from your life.
Mm-hmm.
But on the other hand, you're riddled with guilt for those things that you mentioned. You have all of these great things in your life. How did you sort of work through those feelings of balancing the knowing you had to do something else with that guilt of look at what I already have?
Yeah. And I don't know that I totally worked through all of that guilt, because I still think there are days where I'm like, man, should I just go back and get the corporate gig? And oh, the money I could be making with bonuses and this and that. And so for me, it really came down to turning inward and going inside of my soul and looking at, but what lights me up? When is enough enough? And for me, that was a really pivotal question, because yes, I could keep working in corporate and I could keep making all this money and I could do a lot of things with that money, right? I could give more to charity, and there were things that were important to me that I could do with that money. But I started looking and going, wait, I have enough money, right? And that's a strange thing for a lot of people to come to a realization about, because we're taught to keep putting in the 401k and keep doing this and keep making money. Someone once said to me, Karin, but what about when you want to get a second home? Like, a second home? I don't need a second home. I don't want to clean the first one I have. What am I going to do with the second one? And don't get me wrong, those things can be nice. But when you're not living your purpose, when you're not doing the thing that lights up your soul, it's going to feel empty. So it doesn't matter how many things you can accumulate. It doesn't matter how many things you have. It's not going to fill that gap in your soul. At least it didn't for me. And so it really was just conversations with my husband, conversations with the kids about, hey, this is what it's going to look like when mom doesn't have that cushy job anymore. And I say cushy kind of tongue in cheek, because it wasn't that cushy. I mean, it was stressful,
I
and
was going to say it came at its own price tag.
Amen. Yes, exactly. But they were so excited for me and what I wanted to be doing, and they saw how I would light up, that it just made it worth it. So I don't know if that answers the question, but.
Well, it does, because you touch on the most important aspect, and that's where you have to turn inwards.
Yeah.
And how old are your kids now?
They're 11 and 13.
So what's really cool, mine are 21 and 24. So what's really cool is inadvertently, you're also showing them just to go for your dreams right off the bat.
Yeah.
Not to fall for that checklist that we did. And that's something we've been avidly teaching our boys is look at what we did. It was wrong. Don't do it.
Right.
Live your life for you. And our kids really learn from us when they see us doing it, and they see us lit up by doing what may seem simple or easy to other people. It completely changes the outlook on their lives as well.
I am so glad you said that. That reminds me of a client that I had, Brenda, and I actually share her story in the book. But she came to me and she had taken a little time away from work to raise her boys. And then she was getting ready to get back into the workforce. And she kept thinking, right, having this like, I should go back into that lucrative media business where she was art director and did a lot of producing for these media outlets. But she was working 24/7. She wasn't happy doing it. She didn't want to run that rat race anymore, but she had this idea in her head that to be a good mom, she had to show her kids that you could do it all. And she could be this high-powered businesswoman and look at me go. But when she really uncovered what it is that she wanted to do, she said, I want to be a teacher. I want to be an art teacher. I thought, well, that's amazing. So I sent her away with some exercises when we uncovered this. She comes back to me for the next session 2 weeks later. I kid you not. She's like, I signed up for a master's program. I'm going to become an art teacher. I was like, well, there we go. way to grab life by the dreams. And it was like she just needed that permission that she could still be there for her kids and show them, hey, you can go for what you want. You don't have to follow society's ideals of what you're supposed to do. And the reality is, she is such a better mom for it because she actually is happy in her career. So when she comes home at night and spends time with her family, she's happy. And so we don't think about that cost, as you say, that your potentially high paying corporate career comes with. And that was, I was miserable all the time, as are a lot of women, and we take it out on our families.
Yeah, and that's really comes to the difference of giving the best to our families versus giving what's left. And
Yeah.
really, when you are pursuing that, and there are some people that they are lit up by that corporate world. They are lit
Yes.
up by doing those things. Fantastic, because we need people to do that,
Yes.
but not all of us. And for the people that are not lit up by that, really what you end up giving your family is whatever's left in the bottom of the cup at the end of the day when everyone else has taken their piece.
Exactly. Yeah, that's a great point.
So maybe can you take us through sort of a brief highlight of what your edit method is?
Yeah, I would love to do that. Thank you. So EDIT stands for envision the goal, document the goal, invest in the goal, and take action in the goal. Now, the whole reason I named my program Edit Your Life is because one of the things that became clear to me when I was writing my first book was that I would send a chapter to my editor and he would never say, Karin, this is garbage, start over. You know, he never ripped the whole thing up, but he'd say, oh, this is interesting. Let's take the punchline and move it here because that'll be more impactful. Or let's make a small tweak here in the storyline. And so I was like, wow, this is kind of what coaching is like. You know, I'm not telling you to throw your life out and start over. We're just looking at some of the pain points or the areas that you want to accelerate. And we're making some tweaks so that we can put a process in place for you to really go forward. So when I was thinking about what I was going to call my program, I was like, well, this makes so much sense. Like edit your life because we're going to make some of those small tweaks. And coaching doesn't mean that something's inherently wrong always. It may just be you want to take your game to the next level. So the process starts out with the E, where we're really getting to dream big. And this is often a really fun part because you're making a list of all the things that you want to do in life. Now, that list may have things that we do not decide to pursue. I know the first time I made that list, I was like, oh, I want to write a one-woman show. I've started it, haven't completed. I've got some other priorities at the moment, but I love that list because it's not lost. And it's a great way to compile all of your life goals and dreams in one place and then get really smart about which ones you want to tackle. Where are you being called to first? And how do we bring those goals to fruition? So once we align on those top areas that you want to focus on, we can move into documenting the goal. Because let's face it, dreams are awesome in your head, but if they stay in your head, they stay dreams. So we want to actually make this happen. We're going to come up with a plan. How are we going to put this into action? What does your quarterly plan look like? Your yearly plan? What are those big milestones that you know you want to be hitting? And typically someone will coach with me for 6 months to start. So it's like, okay, in the next 6 months, well, we're working together. What do you want to accomplish? What do we really want to focus on so that we can see some movement? The other piece is I, and these don't always happen separately, but I is all about investing in the goal. I think a lot of people think, oh, I've got this dream. That's great, Karin. I don't have the money, but it's not always about money. So there's a great acronym in the book. It's TEMPL, TEMPL. Time, energy, money, people, and learning. Those are the 5 areas that you need to think about investing in your goal. Because sometimes the investment really is more in yourself. What do I need to learn? What are the skills that I'm missing so that I can bring this dream to fruition? And then the last one is take action. And that's really where accountability comes into play. And we're doing the damn thing, if you will. And that's what one of my clients always says. She's like, I just want to be doing the damn thing. And I'm like, yes, great. So this is where the rubber meets the road. And we're making sure that you're actually following through. Because again, you can write a bunch of stuff down on paper. You can invest in a bunch of courses. But if you're not taking the right targeted actions and following through, it's going to be really hard to make that dream come true.
And often it just sometimes takes just that first tiny step just to get the momentum, because
Yes.
it's a lot of the times that first step is the scariest. Believe me, turning on my mic for the first few times, even for the first couple of years,
Yeah.
there's still that, oh, can I really do this?
Right.
And it's just typical. It's innate in all of us,
Yeah.
is you have to find those first few steps and not necessarily worry too much about the ones that come afterwards. Is just focus what's in front of you. Yeah, have your plan, know where you're
Yeah.
going, but ultimately you can only focus on where you are, because I'm sure you found is that once you start taking those couple of steps,
Yep.
other things surprisingly come into your picture.
Yes. And so I actually talk about it in the book. It's called the domino effect. That's how I like to think of it, where I made this first big change of leaving corporate. And all of a sudden, the other changes became easier. We picked up and moved our whole family from New Jersey to South Carolina. And, a lot of people are like, how could you do that? And I'm like, I don't know. It just was easy. I turned inward. I asked myself why I'm living here in New Jersey. Where would I rather live, if anywhere? What are the things about that area that attract me? And we ended up landing on Greenville, South Carolina. And so what seemed to a lot of people like a big move, to me was just like, oh, I'm just going to move my family. It was no big deal because I'd already made some really big, tough changes, and it just made sense to keep going in that direction.
And you're touching on something important there, and that's following your intuition, knowing what's
Mm-hmm.
right for you. And it's
Yeah.
something that we went through. We're in Nova Scotia. For a few years we went back to Ottawa,
Mm-hmm.
so our youngest could go to high school and start college and that, but we kept our house here. And we were debating, do we stay in Ottawa, do we come back to Nova Scotia? And we'd come back for a couple of weeks sort of vacation, and we were honestly toying with the idea of selling this house.
Wow.
And it was our first morning here. I was sweeping the front porch, and something came over me and said, no, no, we're keeping this house. So in the matter of the 2 weeks that we were there, my husband and I started conspiring to move back. Meanwhile, trying to figure out how to tell our two sons, who were just about to start college, oh, that guess what? We're going to move you in on your own, and we're moving back to Nova Scotia.
Yeah.
And this is still during COVID. And people were looking at me going, how can you abandon your children like that? I'm like, well,
Mm.
first of all, they're not kids.
Yeah.
I've raised them well. But we also knew that we had to do this. We had to do this for ourselves.
Yeah, that's important because I think there are a lot of women who are putting their kids first. And I'm not saying that there aren't times where we do that, right? And there are times where that's absolutely appropriate. And there's times where, quite frankly, I wish I'd put them first a little bit more in the past. But there are times where we need to step up and say, you know what? No, I need this for me so that I can be a better mom. So you know what? They can be better kids. Your kids are going to do so well because they now know how to do their dishes, manage their laundry, all the things that a lot of kids, unfortunately, in their 30s now, not kids anymore either, they don't know how to do these things because they've been living with mom and dad for forever.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I think, you're doing yourself a service, and you're doing your kids a service by making these decisions and following that intuition.
And
And
somewhere,
go ahead, please.
I was going to say, somewhere along the line, as mothers, we kind of have to stop falling on our own swords,
Yeah. Yeah.
because a lot of us are really good at that. Really good at sacrificing everything for our kids as if it's some accolade to be proud of. And yes, that's part of motherhood, but also having your own life and being your own person. That is also part of motherhood, but we forget.
Yeah. There's a balance there. And so I
Yeah.
love that we can have this conversation because hopefully there's some people listening right now who could use that advice and that guidance and will take that to heart and actually be able to pivot and shift the direction of their life and have more happiness and joy.
So going back to your edit process
Yeah,
and coaching women through that, what are some of the major themes that you see women struggling with?
for sure. Confidence. That confidence and mindset, I would say, are probably the two biggest things. And what I find with anyone who wants to reinvent their life or, grab life by the dreams, however you want to phrase it, is it's 80% mindset and 20% mechanics. And we can build a growth mindset. We can strengthen our confidence muscle by doing certain exercises, by just being present to the fact that we're maybe not being confident in an area of our life and actively working to shift that around and to think about things differently. And I love that because that gives us power. That gives us control. We don't have to sit and just accept our circumstances anymore. We can say, no, this is an area that isn't working for me. I want to get better at that. Maybe I don't feel like I have the confidence to change that right now, but what are the baby steps that I could take to start building that confidence muscle to make me feel comfortable to make that change?
So for the women that are sitting there nodding their heads, agreeing with what we're saying, but also feeling themselves bump up against that confidence issue, do you have a tiny exercise that they could maybe try just to start to build that confidence muscle?
Yeah, in the book, I give actually 6 ways for you to create what I call unshakable confidence. And so maybe I'll just share 2 of those quickly. And then, obviously you can read the others in the book. But the first one, and this is hopefully going to be really freeing for everybody, is to own it. Just like own your current circumstances. Stop apologizing for what you don't have, because you do have a lot of amazing skills and things that are going to carry you forward. And I see a lot of women coming into my coaching saying, but I would go for that promotion, but I don't have this, or I would start my own business, but my dad was a bad businessman. And so I'm probably going to have the same fate. And it's like, stop worrying about what everyone else has or how other people are doing things, and focus on what you have and what are the skills that you bring to bear. I remember when I was going for a chief of staff role, I looked at all the other chief of staffs, and they'd all been men, and they'd all had phenomenal financial acumen. I mean, they knew how to read a P&L backwards, forwards, upside down, whatever. And that was not a skill set I had developed because I had spent most of my career in marketing. But they didn't need another man in that role who knew how to read a P&L. What they needed was a woman who could come in and tell stories, who could connect the dots from the senior executives to the frontline employees. They needed me. They needed a marketer. So if I sat there and kept saying, well, I'm not going to go for this role because I don't have great financial acumen, I would have missed out on a huge opportunity to grow in my career. But instead, I was able to shift the focus onto the fact that I had these amazing marketing skills and go into the interviews and pitch myself that way. And so I just want to invite everybody right now to just own it. Own what you have. Own your skills. Now, you already heard me do a little foreshadowing around the TEMPLE acronym and sharing that learning is a piece of the puzzle, right? That's a piece of what you need to invest in. So I'm not saying don't focus on some skills that you want to improve. Of course, that's a piece of the journey. But when we really start to appreciate ourselves, our authentic selves, and what we have, that is going to give you confidence, a natural confidence boost that like no other. And then the second thing I'll just quickly share is fake it till you make it. And I picked this one specifically because there's a little controversy around this lately. There's some women out there who this really makes them uncomfortable. They don't like the idea of faking something. But the way I like to think about it is acting as if and ask yourself this question right now. If I were the most confident, successful version of myself, what would I do? And I guarantee the most confident, successful version of yourself would go write that book, start that business, go to a nonprofit that makes her heart sing, whatever it is that you've been toying with or that's been sitting on your heart. You'd go and do that thing. And so I want to just invite people to start thinking about themselves, not so much as faking, right? But acting as if. And then when you start to do that, all of a sudden you go, I'm actually not faking that anymore. I actually feel that confident. I actually feel this way. I've had good success by taking this approach. Why would I not continue? And that, I think, can be just another tool in the toolbox that you can pick from when you're facing a confidence issue.
There's actually been a lot of research that's come out lately about creating that vision of your future self and acting as if you're already that person, and how that actually completely reprograms your mind. It's certainly the skill set that I inadvertently used to completely transform my life from where it was 6 years ago. So yeah, I think the term was coined in the 80s, fake it till you make it. And yeah, there has been a lot of negative connotations around it. But if you keep acting like how you are now, then how are you ever going to get to be your future self?
Right. Yeah. And I think too,
you have to step forward.
yes. And sometimes I think when people hear fake it, they think, well, am I supposed to just fake that I'm happy or this? And that's not what we're talking about, obviously, right? It's about stepping into that new skill set or that new persona that you need to be at your next level. So yeah, I love that. I love that you're walking, living proof of it.
Now, I've had the privilege of reading your book, so I know that it is jam-packed with all sorts of resources for anyone to really be able to transfer their lives using your edit method. So can you maybe tell us where people can get their hands on a copy?
I would love to do that. Anywhere books are sold. So Amazon, Barnes and Noble, it is paperback and ebook. And one of my favorite things that we didn't really get a chance to chat about, but I'll just quickly mention, is at the end of every chapter is a make it happen section. So yes, if you read my book, you're going to get so much value out of it. But the real magic, the real transformation is going to come in when you start to do the exercises and implement the learnings at the end of each chapter. So yes, go get it on Amazon, Barnes and Noble. If you want, you can check out karinfreeland.com/dreams. That's Karin Freeland, FREELAND.com/dreams. There'll be a link right there to order it. And when you go to exit, there might be a special pop-up gift. So just throwing that out there.
I love it. And as we wrap up, Karin, do you have any final words of wisdom?
Yeah, what are you waiting for? Go grab life by the dreams. I mean, we're given this one life, this one shot at making magic while we're here on earth, and you owe it to yourself. You have been given this unique purpose, this unique dream for a reason. You were meant to go follow it, so go do it.
Love it. Love it. Now, to connect with Karin, please make sure you check out the show notes. I will have all of the links in there. And my goal for the roller coaster of midlife is to empower women like you to thrive in this amazing chapter of our lives. So go on, embrace the adventure, and start rocking midlife like the badass that you know that you are. If you've enjoyed this episode, subscribe, leave a review, and share it with a friend, because our greatest gift is in our community. Don't forget to visit my website, therollercoasterpodcast.com, and click on Start Here to get your free audio course, 3 steps to go from hot mess to badass and start rocking midlife. Thank you to my listeners for joining us. And Karin, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom.
This was so much fun. Thanks for having me.
Until next time, keep riding the roller coaster and embracing the midlife adventure.
Ride.